And I'll take a Viking scratch game, too. Can I get it bagged?
You mean sacked? Whoa! Whoa! Cool. Yeah! All right. Who wants some? Get pumped. They're back. So is your chance at $100,000.
What up? Thanks for joining me. I'm Eric Nordquist, Nordo from 9 to noon. And courtesy of the Minnesota Lottery, get pumped. It's game time. Minnesota Lottery brings us a Minnesota Vikings Training Camp stream featuring Vikings radio analyst, former linebackers coach, and the ornery one of the tandem up in the booth for Vikings games. It's Pete Bercich. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Oh, couldn't be better, man. And anybody that's choosing to hang out with us for the next half hour, we will be taking your questions at points throughout the conversation. So feel free to chime in, whether it's via Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, wherever you choose to catch us on all of our social platforms at KFAN1003. And just as a reminder,
Carrier pigeon.
Yes, courier pigeon as well. And have that pigeon dial up hashtag KFAN Vikes. And that's going to give you an opportunity to win a prize package at the end of this, which includes $50 in Minnesota Vikings scratchers. Okay, so there's a cash opportunity. Everybody walks away a winner. Yeah. Vikings mug, T-shirt, all sorts of things as part of this prize pack. So all you got to do, hop on social media and use the hashtag KFAN Vikes. Now, Peter.
Hey, Nordo, could you get a bigger thing for your microphone? Like big enough, like maybe like this big?
Well, the whole goal as part of this was to cover as much of my face. I'm not an attractive man, Peter.
You got a technology right about now, don't you?
Yeah, and so as much as it will cover my face, I think the better off ultimately that I am. Now, Peter, I want to start. I need to go quick twitch with you here, okay? First preseason games on Saturday. It's a 3:00 game. Does not count, but game matters. And you're a music man. So I need quick twitch from the radio analyst. And I'm going to start off. We'll get into the serious stuff here momentarily. But I'm going to start off simply enough saying the name of a Vikings player. And as an accomplished guitarist, as an accomplished stage performer, I need you to liken said Vikings player to music maybe that you love, and you love, or maybe somebody that you hate.
Okay. Or at least that I'm familiar with, so we can add that.
That's
sure. Okay. What do we got?
Feel free to rip an entire genre if you so choose. We'll start with an easy one. It's Dalvin Cook. Cook, Pete.
I think with Dalvin Cook, you have to go with somebody like Queen. Right. Ooh. Dalvin Cook is as versatile as it gets. And I think Queen was probably as versatile of a band as you can get. They were huge. They were big. They filled up stadiums. Those two have a lot in common.
I love that. Queen is perfect.
Is that pithy enough, or do you want me to draw that one out?
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Dalvin can do everything. He can run routes. He can, run a guy over. He can outrun a guy. I mean, and like I said, Queen's the same way. They did everything, from love songs to they got heavy. I mean, it was they do everything. They did everything and do everything well. And at the time, they were as big of a band as there is. And Dalvin Cook, I think, the best running back in the NFL.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Okay. How about another? I think this one's easy. Danielle Hunter.
I'm
thinking heavy.
Yeah,
I'm thinking hard hitting.
I'm thinking, I think if we're just going to do this, I'm going to say Creedence Clearwater Revival, CCR. Only because CCR, they're a little heavy and loud and whatnot. But Daniil loves cars from that era, right? He models himself after those cars from the late 60s and early 70s. And it's kind of like that all kind of ties together. Does that make sense?
It does.
Like CCR, maybe a Led Zeppelin, I'm a Led Zeppelin kind of guy.
Okay.
I think, he might fit into there. Yeah, I think Zeppelin would be good.
What about Rage Against the Machine?
I like that. I mean, that's, he's not, he doesn't get political or anything like that, but yeah, Rage Against the Machine. I mean, System of a Down, that's another type of, another type of tune or another type of band. I think that would fit.
What about Chad Beebe? I said Modest Mouse.
Chad Beebe. Is there a father-son in music where the father was really popular and then the son did a good job, but it's a good question. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of how I'm going with this right now. Is thinking.
What about Bob Dylan, Jacob Dylan? Bob Dylan, HOF. Dylan. The Wallflowers had a couple of hits, but they kind of stayed up against the wall.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's the perfect. That's the perfect analogy.
Okay, last one.
Because everybody knows BB, right? Everybody knows it's like Dylan. Yeah. Oh, Jacob Dylan. Let's give him a shot. He might be as good as his dad.
Absolutely. Right? Brilliant.
There we go.
Hercules Mataafa.
Hercules not Mataafa.
Okay.
Oh my God. I'm trying to think now. Geez, that's a good one. That's a good one. Maybe Jimi Hendrix, because he sang a song called "Can You See Me."
And thus far, unfortunately, we haven't been able to see him.
No, we haven't seen much of Mr. Mataafa. And I've been looking at this depth chart and putting all this together, and it's like, he's going into his fourth year. But for a lot of these guys, they're going to find out that making the roster for that second year is going to be harder than making it for their rookie year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially
and even now, the 8 balls, and he's behind the 8 ball. Hey, Pete, how about this question? So, big talker, of course, leading up to the first preseason game this Saturday. It's a 3:00 kick. We're going to have a 2-hour pregame on your flagship 100.3 FM, The Fan. You're going to be back in the booth. Fans are going to be back in the booth, and that's sweet.
I can't wait.
But I'm thinking about these joint practices, and there's some things that came out of camp today that I really want to dig into. Some of it interesting and maybe promising. Some of it's worrisome. But who would you have fought on the Kansas City Chiefs roster during a joint practice to get out of having to practice for the entire period? Would it have been, let me see, maybe you throw a shoulder on a blitz to an Elvis Gerbach? What about Byron Bam Morris? Yeah. Maybe you get in a tussle trying to cover Tony Gonzalez on a mesh route. Like who would you have picked a fight with just so that you could tell, Denny would get pissed off. He'd start steaming. His voice would get high pitched. And he's like, we're done for the day, guys.
Yeah, we would. And what's so funny is that we would do that. And I remember when we would go Kansas City, you'd be on one field and there'd be bleachers and then like a high school stadium. And then on the other opposite side of the bleachers was the other side of the ball. So it was our offense and their defense. And people would watch us because we're in the stadium, right? And all of a sudden just see people start running up the bleachers and looking over the top, like what's going on over there. And we, in the back of our minds, knew Hunter Goodwin, Greg DeLong, those guys, Simmons was the guy that I remember Hunter got into a fight with, and we actually ended practice. And it was usually the afternoon one. You have to get some work done. So you get there, you get through the morning, and then in the afternoon guys start getting cranky. But then, guys would just start fighting. And they knew it and we knew it. It was kind of one of those nudge, nudge, wink, wink kind of things. But yeah, we get it fighting, and the coaches are like, yeah, we just can't practice. We can't get any work done. And we're like, I know, isn't that crazy? And then it's like, all right, let's get on the buses and go home. So anything to get out of just a little bit of time with those, those 2-a-day practices. I mean, it's they're tough, and we would do 4 to 5 preseason games. And then on top of it, we'd scrimmage New Orleans and Kansas City. So, combined practice against both of them. One would be in Mankato, the other one would be in Wisconsin. And it was, going into the preseason games, that was the most important. Those are the most important days of practice for you if you're trying to make the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And now there's one fewer preseason game. Maybe that matters. Maybe it doesn't. The illusion that there are all of these bubble guys leading into the end of the preseason. I was amazed by this too. 9 to noon, we're out on the perch today. And the Broncos don't really do like morning walkthroughs where the Vikings do the it's no longer 2-a-days, but they're out there. They're at least doing an on-field workout of some sort. And then they're back out there for the practice, kind of the evolution from 2-a-days, pads all the time, banging. Right. And now to a point where it sounds like teams like the Broncos, and they're not unique to this, they're just doing Zoom meetings or they're doing just meeting related bits in rooms, just chilling out. And then eventually they find their way outside.
Right. And there's other parts of this. You think about like when my dad played in the 60s, guys would have actual jobs in the off season because they had to pay the bills. Right. So when you would go to training camp, you would report just like you got up out of bed that day and just went down to training camp. So you had to get in shape. That's what training camp was all about. It was about getting guys in shape and getting them ready to go. In my day, we didn't have too much time in camp. We could work out on our own, wherever that may be. Nowadays, these guys, I mean, they're never really out of shape. Right. I mean, at the end of the season, they might take some time off, but they're training. My point is they don't have as far to go from where they start in July or August to getting to the regular season. So that amount of work maybe doesn't have to be done. But you needed to get the pads on and hit and, get the cobwebs out, as we used to call it, and get used to with your neck and shoulders and all those different things. They've taken a lot of that out. They've taken a lot, the game is not as physical, especially in practice, as it used to be, but it's faster. It's more wide open. Whether or not, you think the game's better now than it was. I mean, we'll see, but it's just a different type of game. And, that's the cool thing about being in such a competitive atmosphere is that you got to find a way to win. And if starting the regular, not even having training camp, but you just basically start your regular season practices, right? You just, once training camp's over, I mean, that's really isn't that what it is? It's just, you only practice once a day and you meet a lot more. So they're just starting the regular season practices from day one. So, not a bad, who knows, the results we'll see.
I want to hit some talkers with you momentarily, but news out of camp today. You may have seen Zimmer's press conference earlier today. If you didn't, the main bullets from this, Pete, the fact that Greg Joseph, he's going to be getting all the kicking work, it sounds like, on Saturday against Denver. So Riley Patterson still trying to work that out. We might dip into the special teams world of hell that thing's been over the last couple of years later on.
Right.
But this thing for me, first of all, at practice today, I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know if you ever played against Ricky Prohl, but his kid, Blake, the undrafted kid, unfortunately, it seems like they're kind of winding down the receiver list by the week here, as you have BC Johnson, who tore his ACL. He's going to be out for the year. Really needed a bounce back after kind of a tough sophomore campaign. But then you have Blake Prohl just trying to maybe sniff a spot on a team. And his knee just exploded at practice. He was carted off. Excruciating pain was the report I saw from Courtney Cronin and others. So bad news for him and that wide receiver group kind of winding down quickly due to unfortunate injuries.
Yeah, it is. It is unfortunate. The other thing with that, with that group is how much are you going to see at Jefferson and Thielen once the preseason games start. But that's okay because you need to find out who's going to be the number 3 and the number 4 and the number 5. So, KJ Osborne, D.D. Westbrook. I think Jacena, I was at every practice last week. I think Jacena had some really, really good days. So these guys are getting a lot of reps in practice. And there's a spot. I mean, there's a number 3 wide receiver position, which is in this day and age of football, is huge. who's going to fill that void? Is Amir Smith-Marset going to step up as a rookie and, be that guy coming from Iowa, which is a much more, run the ball, simple kind of an offense into something that's this, that's this complicated. So that'll be interesting to see as well. We have bodies. Fortunately, that number 3 receiver, you look back in time, even with us in the 90s, you had Jake Reed. Jake Reed was that possession, big body, a little bit different type of wide receiver. So when you have Jefferson and Thielen, that number 3 guy, whether it's BB or whomever, they just have to be, you just got to be a little bit different. You got to have your own little, skill set, and which one's going to fit in there. My money right now is on KJ Osborne. Obviously, I didn't see practices today, but after the first week of camp, he, I think, did a lot of really, really good things.
Hey, do you ever look back and you get frustrated where you mentioned Jake Reed and they had the Burger King 3 deep poster with him and Carter and Moss, and why they didn't do one with you, Dixon Edwards?
Because they wanted they wanted people to actually put the posters up in their rooms or somewhere, not use them to stuff in boxes so your china doesn't get destroyed.
Weren't you there was Jack Del Rio there for a season with you? Did you guys overlap, or was he before you?
No, I played 2 years with Jack.
Okay, yeah. How about you, Dixon Edwards, and Jack? I'd buy that poster in a second.
You can't forget Eddie McDaniel.
Ooh.
You cannot forget about Eddie McDaniel. I mean, Ed McDaniel,
that's a mistake on my part. So we got to knock.
No, I'm just saying, Eddie Mack is one of the better linebackers this franchise has had over the last, 20, 30 years. He's one of my personal favorites. I mean, the guy just, from Clemson, not really big, but fit the system. He was the system kind of a guy, at least with Tony Dungy and what they tried to do. But man, Eddie could hit, and he was a hell of a good football player, man. Yeah.
So we'll do you, Dixon, and Eddie Mack then. So Del Rio's out. That's fine. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Sweet. Right.
Perfect.
One thing out of camp as well, Pete, and being there, Teddy's in the mix. So there's some Teddy obsession and some nostalgia. There's too much time for him, and we're just happy he's got a shot to play in the league again. But the news for Vikings fans right now, and I don't like to be doom and gloom. Partly it's because my nature. I'm an adult man child. I love the Vikings.
You're a Viking
the other
fan.
part of it. Yeah, and given the time slot that I work in, doom and gloom just doesn't work very well. So with that said, this Darrisaw thing, Christian Darrisaw, you don't get Riley Reif back in the mix. Now he's down in Cincy. We're going to see him week 1 down in the Queen City. You get Darrisaw at 23rd overall. You say he's the top guy on your board. You trade back to get him. And it's this lingering groin issue has put him basically out of the mix for almost all of camp, comes back for a few days, very limited reps. And you're looking at a depth chart right now, which you are very much equity trained in all of this. You understand these are all subject to change. Mm-hmm. But, you're seeing Oli Udoh, your starting right guard. You're seeing Wyatt Davis, the guy you drafted, the Big Ten O-lineman of the year. He's kind of switching off as almost like a swing guy. He's getting reps at center. He's not playing with the ones. And then you have Rashad Hill, the ultimate journeyman backup guy who's helped us out in a pinch a few different times, but certainly not necessarily your preferred 16-game starter at the anchor spot. I'm kind of worried about how this thing is playing out right now with the 23rd overall pick.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I mean, you look at Darrisaw on film, and he has the requisite height, the requisite weight, the requisite speed. He has all the abilities. The question is whether or not he can put all that together and get on the field. And it always for an offensive lineman, a hamstring injury, it's like you can live without that. Groin injury, it's like okay. You would like to think that it's not, going to continue to happen, or it's not going to be a situation where for the next 4 years, you're constantly wondering where the guy is and is he healthy. But, that's a job for Phil Rauscher. I mean, he's a guy that's got to get him ready and motivate him. I mean, he's got to do that. So I ultimately have to do that himself. But, you look at Rashad Hill, at least you know what you're going to get out of him. And there is some value and consistency at that position. And by that, I mean, we had Bryant McKinney, who one game would look, he would be as good as any left tackle there is. And I mean that. He was that good. It could be that good. And then he would have games where he just struggled. And the problem you have is with game planning. If I know I have a left tackle that's going to need some help, I can game plan that. I can put tight ends over there. I can run formations. I can do certain things to help him out. If you got a guy who week to week, you have no idea where he's going to be. 1 week he may play all pro. The next week you coach him like an all pro and say he doesn't need help. He's good one-on-one all day, and then gets, beat 3 or 4 times. So, Rashad Hill's going into his 6th season. He's been around a long time. He's a veteran. I think that makes you, that makes you feel better about it. But going into the season, you were looking at, 3 of your 5 linemen being first-round picks, and then a guard being a second-round pick. That's a ton of equity in the draft to get that offensive line right. And, kind of like, here we go again. But it's not something that requires surgery, anything like that. So, there still is a long, what is today, the 10th? You still have over a month, get yourself ready for the season. And so, hopefully they can straighten all that out.
Absolutely. We have about 8 minutes left, Pete, and I'm going to be giving away a Minnesota Lottery prize pack to somebody. They're going to get $50 in scratchers, courtesy of the Viking scratchers, which kick ass. Vikings awesome. Mug, shirt, all kinds of stuff. So chance to get paid just for watching a Vikings training camp stream featuring you, Pete Bercich, Vikings radio analyst. Awesome. And moving on here, a few more to go here. And I'm glad this individual asked this question. So you've been doing, and I loved him, ever since the draft, you've been hitting guys on film, and you got the full film breakdown. I've watched him on Vikings.com. And that's one of my favorite parts about just kind of learning from you is you've done this. You break down the film. You understand this at a high level. And so I've learned a ton from him. And William Bradley asked, hey, which rookie will make the most impact this season? And I'd love to know who we just talked about Darisaw. He's got a tough road back just to contribute. But some of these other guys, you've broken them down. Who are you really excited about in terms of these new kids?
Obviously Darisaw is the guy. He's your first round pick. You need him. You got to have him out there. I think that kind of goes without saying. If the guy starts, and once he gets healthy, obviously he's the big guy. The couple guys that I really like that I saw, one is Patrick Jones, kid from Pittsburgh, defensive end. I saw some things on film, with his stance and some other, fundamental things, pads getting a little. He's looked really good. Looked really quick. Janaris Robinson's another one of my favorites, but unfortunately for him, looks like he's kind of, disappearing a little bit. I really liked what I saw at him in college. The kid has a ton of potential. But I think the kid that the guy, I call him a kid, the man that may come out of the radar is Kene Nwangwu, the running back from Iowa State. Watching him in practice with his size, he's 6'1", 215-ish, and the way he runs, I think he's going to give Alexander Madison a good run for his money. He's the guy that am looking forward to watching play the most in the preseason, because that's that running back position, right? You don't get hit in practice. You might get hit, but you don't get tackled in practice. But I think Nwangwu's, I really like what I see out of him, in the first few days of practice. So, any one of those guys could sneak in and get, if Patrick Jones gets some significant playing time and Nwangwu gets some significant playing time, that's great. You'd love to see a rookie or someone slip into that number 3 wide receiver spot, but I think right now it's all up to KJ Osborne, and I think he's the guy that's going to get that number 3.
Yeah, KJ Osborne has been not only steamy, but he's really taken advantage of, after a less than fruitful, eventful rookie season for him, He's had a really good camp, so that's super cool. Yeah. And again, Saturday at 3, we'll get to see some of this materialize in a game against the Broncos at US Bank Stadium. One thing that we probably won't see is a lot of Kirk Cousins. Now, right. You've been at practice, you've seen some of this stuff. You know that he misses the time with the COVID close contact and all of that. Frankly, whether it was at camp today against the Broncos, where every quarterback on the field looked bad, Pete. It was bad across the freaking board, and that includes our guy number 8. It was Teddy, it was Drew Lock, it was Browning, it was Kirk, everybody throwing it to the other team. Fangio and Zimmer had their defenses humming, and they're probably, patting themselves on the back. But for Kirk, the idea of, for some guys like a KJ Osborne needing a great camp to make the team and to find a role for himself, Kirk's the guy.
Right.
But we know that. But does it worry you at all when you see a guy that didn't have a great mini camp, didn't have, great OTAs, comes in now to training camp, misses some time? I don't think that's the biggest deal in the world, but just the quality that we're seeing from Kirk right now, a little tight, and I'm not seeing the evolution that we want to see from him.
No, and what's interesting is in years past, for up until really last year when there wasn't a training camp, defenses always were ahead of the offense. And, okay, why is that? Well, offense is based so much on communication and timing, especially up front with those 5 offensive linemen. And it just takes some time, to get that together. Defenses, it's easier to throw blitzes in and do some different things. That's the other question were the problems just base offense and base defense, or was this a situation where Denver was blitzing quite a bit? I remember we had a preseason game in Buffalo maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and we looked absolutely awful. And you go back and you watch, and it was, our first time against 3-4 defense, and Buffalo just pinned their ears back and, blitzed the tar out of us. And it's like in a preseason game, those guys aren't going to know and have practiced and perfected all of their protections and all the different things that you have to do up front. So it's a little bit misleading. And I think in the same way, watching Cousins in practice, accuracy on the deep ball and some of those other things, I thought, they look good. And the quarterbacks, I think they're going to be a little bit behind right now. And, do they have their best receivers on the field? We didn't have Jefferson, obviously. That changes everything. You're not going to game plan them for them this early in the season, but when you get into the season, you are. So, no, I'm not. No, don't press the panic button or anything like that. I think it's just your normal, evolution of how this goes.
Yeah, I suppose it is. Well, it's August 11th, Pete. Maybe we shouldn't just tank the season or give up quite yet. Hey, speaking of that, with what I've seen from the defense, whether they've impacted things when we're talking about Kirk not looking at his sharpest or otherwise, I'm starting to see what Zimmer kind of planned when he started bringing in all of these new bodies. And so kind of finishing up here, your overall view on whether it's Patrick Peterson, who's looked fantastic, the new school version of the Williams Wall. You get Kendricks and Barr back healthy, maybe trying to find a third guy like a Vigil who can step in and play some of those base 4-3 situations. And just this defense coming together with Zimmer and now the new senior defensive assistant, Paul Gunther, his old buddy in town as well.
Yeah, and, you look that there might be, 4 returning starters from a year ago? I mean, that's it. And Danielle Hunter didn't even play. So now, of all those guys that were on the team last year, the only guy that played the entire season was Harrison Smith. I mean, Kendricks missed some, Barr missed quite a bit, Hunter missed the whole season. Tomlinson, I think it's going to take Tomlinson a little bit of time. He was a nose tackle and a very, very good one with the Giants, and he's playing 3 technique. So people are like, "What's the big deal? You move over a gap. I mean, what's the big deal?" All your reads are different. All your fundamentals are a lot different. I think he played a little bit of 3 technique with the Giants and didn't stand out like he did when he was at nose tackle. So it's going to take him a little bit of time. I think Michael Pierce he's a monster. I watched him go against Bradbury and you watch Bradbury and you're like, he's got to learn how to drop his anchor. Well, Pierce he's giving them everything he can up the middle. And those two guys are, they're unbelievable. I think there is going to be some competition between Weatherly and Wanham. Weatherly, you watch him, he didn't get to the quarterback at Carolina. Even when he got to the quarterback with us, it was on the interior pass rushing, on third down. The Vikings have shown some bear type fronts early in camp where, you have 3D linemen, and then basically Wanham is playing almost an outside linebacker. You see him dropping a lot. He had an interception in practice one day. So, at the stadium on Saturday, he had an interception.
Hey, how realistic is it to rotate those guys when you think about, okay, so Weatherly will get a fair share. Then you mentioned Wanham, right? But trying to keep some of those other guys fresh while Daniil's really the mainstay on that line. It's just sometimes in terms of momentum, just familiarity and playing with each other, some sort of consistency. It does feel unrealistic to me that you're going to consistently see like a 3 or maybe even a 4th D end constantly getting into the mix one side or the other.
No question about it. That's where the game's evolved. I mean, one of the things I love about Tomlinson is he hasn't missed a game in his career. He's been healthy. But when you look at his numbers, he only plays 55 to 60% of the snaps. That's because the Giants went to a completely different defensive front. Same thing's going to be here. So if you bring in a guy like Wanham maybe on the outside, then you can move a guy like Weatherly inside. And I think that's where, Weatherly has shown thus far in his career some of the best pass rushing ability is let him run stunts in the middle, let him run stunts on the inside. So, who else will fit in there and be an interior pass rusher? I guess that's another big question is who's going to be the interior pass rushers? Because we know Tomlinson and Pierce are going to be the run stuffers, So who's going to move in on the inside on third down and be able to, put pressure on the quarterback. So that's the fastest way to make this team. You want to make this team be a really, really good third down pass rusher from the nose tackle or 3 technique position.
Absolutely. For the first time in a few years, it feels like depth is actually potentially in our court. When we didn't even get to mention Armin Watts, obviously Sheldon Richardson back with this team. And if he's only on third down, the Seahawks can't run traps at him all day. So that's a good thing. But hey, man, I thank you so much for spending some time with me, Minnesota Lottery, hanging out and chatting some football, my friend.
No, it's great. I mean, and it only gets better. Camp is one day at a time. You had a couple good preseason games, and you have 2 weeks before the season even starts. I mean, it's hurry up and wait, in a lot of ways, but it's always interesting to see when you get the lights on and you get the game going and you get the fans and you get the uniforms on. Some guys just step up and take it to the next level, and some guys just disappear even though they've been doing well at practice. So we'll see who in this mix of 90 some players are going to stand out and stand up when we take on the Broncos Saturday.
Absolutely. And before we go, just hang tight with me. It's Pete Bercich at Pete Bercich. You're going to see him. You're going to be on some simulcast, a little TV work. No makeup required, by the way. I mean, how handsome are you? My God. It's going to be Saturday at 3. And, of course, it's hosting the Colts and then at Kansas City. That's the preseason schedule. Congratulations to Jim Tabasco. First of all, what an awesome name. At Jimbo Tabasco via Twitter. He used the hashtag KFANVikes, and he wins the Minnesota Lottery prize package. Again, $50 in Vikings scratchers and Vikings mug, Vikings T-shirt, so much more. And thanks again to the Minnesota Lottery. It's game time, so get pumped up. Minnesota Lottery, we appreciate you offering up this training camp stream with Pete Bercich. I'm Nordo from 9 to noon. Again, catch Pete side by side with PA, not only via the simulcast, but on our flagship 100.3 FM, The Fan, each and every Vikings game. Have a good night, Pete.
Take care, Nordo. Thank you.
All right, kick it, Zach.
Vikings scratch game, please.
Are you ready to play?
Yeah.
Are you ready to win?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, baby. You need a car wash?
Yeah. No?
All right, cool. That'll be $5. Get pumped. They're back. So is your chance at $100,000.